I'm Kara, and welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. I believe that all of us possess unique gifts and talents that allow us to serve the world and our own growth in the highest possible way. Our lives are an expression of our thoughts, beliefs, and actions. And here, we will explore businesses, thought leaders, and topics designed to inspire, helping propel your own growth so you can live your best and most purposeful life. Welcome to Soul Inspiring Business. Welcome back to the Soul Inspiring Business podcast. Today, it's a solo show, and we're going to be talking about the topic of authenticity. So I've used it a lot on the show. I know that when you're out there scrolling, there's people talking about, oh, you need to show up as your authentic self. And, that's the way that, we're meant to work in the world in authenticity. And so what does that even really mean? So really what we're talking about in this show is, what do I mean by it? Why I feel like it's important as it relates to your business and having that awareness of, who you're meant to be in the world, how to apply that to your business as a strategy. And then also a few things that I'm working on actually for you and some exciting things to come. So first off, when we talk about authenticity, what it could go in a lot of different directions, right? Because sometimes you may hear people say or do things and say, oh, well, I'm just being true to me. So I'm going to do this or berate this person or whatever. And I think that the one thing I want to say is that I don't necessarily think that when we say you're moving into your authentic self, that it's an excuse for bad behavior. I think that, certainly there are times when you can speak your truth. And I think that's certainly important to live in your truth. But as it relates to how you interact with other people, I think sometimes, and especially in the entrepreneurial or the business world, there are just certain things that I think are not made to be public, or not necessarily, or maybe it's not made for you to take that on and to, call out other people or name call in the name of so-called, well, I'm just being true to me or authentic. So I think that's one thing that, can get, it can be an excuse for bad behavior. So I'll tell you that, how I see it, or the context that I'm using when I say our truest job is to show up as your authentic self, or your truest job is to show up as your authentic self. The way that I'm meaning it is that I believe that it's really about growing into this highest expression of you. Because if you're listening to this show, I'm sure that you probably will follow me when I say that we are spiritual beings in a human physical body. And so this body, this shell, this uh, physicalness that we've decided to take on in this lifetime is not actually the core of who we are, right? It is the physical body that we have taken on. And in many ways, and I believe that, you may have put certain obstacles in place in your lifetime for whatever reasons to learn a particular lesson. Uh, but I don't think that, of course, that physicalness is not you. You are the soul of you. And so when we talk about being authentic, I think, and growing into the highest expression of you, what you're really doing is your soul is learning and growing and comes into this lifetime to expand into a higher potentiality of you. And when I say that, and I think that part of that is choice too, because I do believe that we all have choice, and we all have, as a soul, we have the opportunity to grow and expand. And for some, they may say, you know what, I've grown enough. I feel like I'm good. And some may want to take it further and further. And there's no judgment one way or the other. But I think that there is an opportunity always to expand into higher and higher levels of consciousness and to higher and higher levels and understanding and awareness for this soul part of you. And that's where, when I talk about authenticity, and how it especially relates to your business, because this is a show about soul inspiring business. How do we in our professional lives also show up as this highest expression? Of course, there may be different versions of us, right? So when we talk about the version of you that, or the role that you play as mother, as father, as sister, as brother, spouse, friend, there are all these different roles that we may play, and we may take on slightly different roles or characteristics in those relationships. But I think that actually, as we become and grow more and more into the person we're meant to be, I think those roles actually sort of come together a little bit more, whereas you start to be uh, more aware of who you are. So you have better boundaries on those relationships. And some of those relationships might go away and some might blossom as you continue to grow and evolve. Because as you think about yourself as an energetic being, and as you continue to evolve and, I would say, vibrate at higher and higher levels of consciousness and in your own evolution, there will be relationships that come and go during that life path, right? But again, as I think about it, and I think about authenticity as it relates to how do we show up in our professional sense, because that is such a big part of most of our lives, um, then I think it's a really important part to honor in our professional lives, because all of us, you, were given talents and gifts just that your soul took on, that your soul probably already knows some of these things because it's part of who you are. And you come down in this earth in this lifetime to almost come home to a more expansive awareness of who you are as a soul expression. And then when you're in that place, when you are, as you take on these different gifts, and it could be that you've decided that, one of your gifts is that you're highly intuitive, you could be highly empathic, you could be super analytical and just get things very quickly on an intellectual level more than others. You could be a great visionary, and so you see things that others don't. You could be gifted musically. You could be gifted, there's so many different ways that these gifts show up. And I think that what I often find for myself and what I hear from others too is that when they're in those gifts, time seems to flow easier. Time seems to go by because it's not as hard. Things aren't as hard because these are things that you naturally are good at. They're also things that you're meant to, I believe, continue to work on and hone and expand into in this lifetime. So when we think about, again, authenticity, I'm thinking of it as how do we move into the highest expression of who we're meant to be? And the other part of that is I believe that we're meant to be here to make a difference in the lives of others, that we're meant to serve people in a big way or a small way, but we're meant to serve. We're meant to be part of a larger community that, helps heal others. I think that that's, a lot of us come down with that mission. But I think overall, we're looking at how do we go into that version, that highest version of us? How do we find and tap into those gifts that are unique to me, to you? And then how do we figure out a way to use those in a way that serve the world in some way? And I've shared this affirmation on the podcast before. This is from Marianne Williamson, but she said, I am programmed, no more, no less, than to be the highest actualization of myself on this planet, to manifest creatively, and to serve others in a big way. And it's some version of that, but I've memorized that for a very long time, probably 15 years ago. I wrote that down and it really stayed with me as this almost like mantra for how to work in the world. How do we figure out how to um, use that knowledge of who we are? And some people talk about it as embodiment. So instead of authenticity, what they may say is you're just embodying the soul, the piece of you that is deep within. You're learning how to have awareness of who you are on a soul level and embody that into all aspects of life. I sometimes use the word authenticity, but again, I think you have to understand the context in which that's coming from. And again, when we use this and we think about it, okay, well, we know this and it can be applied to, many different aspects, but in this case, we're applying it to business and to business strategy. And so with that knowledge, how do we become the highest version of who we are to be able to make a big impact in the world? And I think that there is incredible power in making that impact through business. Because when we, again, think about, there's lots of different ways this could play out. It could be you're in the medical space. There's all different types of places to serve. But I think that sometimes business gets a bad rap because it's not necessarily viewed as a healing, modality. But I think that one of the things that I love about this podcast and one of the impetuses for starting it is that I think we can actually view our businesses with that level. We can actually start to view it if we're showing up in a way to serve others, then why can't business actually be healing to others? Why can't we use our gifts in a way and apply it to our business in a way that helps other people? Now, that could be it's helping somebody navigate really complex financial transactions as a CPA. It could be you are, helping somebody in the PR space just get their message out to the masses and through media, right? So there's a piece of that again that, of course, depending on the message, right, could be super healing and impactful in the world. So I think that it's time we probably changed our view of how we look at business. And for those of you that are attracted to the show, I think that you'll probably really resonate with this message. And that is that, again, business actually can be a healing profession, even though we don't necessarily always think of it that way. And, it's interesting because I was just explaining to somebody the other day, one of the, you know, reasons actually I created the podcast was I often felt like I was in a lot of healing circles. I actually trained under a intuitive healer and would do hands-on healing for people. Really more, it wasn't my main source of income, but I just enjoyed it. But I would be in surrounded by these other healers, and they all had, I might call it just describing, money issues or stories around money that really didn't serve them, such as that it was because they're a healer, they can't take or accept money as a currency, or, that money is bad. And then I would be, then like the opposite extreme is I would be in these business circles and people were so far from talking about, healing and making a difference and showing up that way. And it was very much like very business strategy. And, there was no flow. It was all hustle and work hard and grind and all of this. Right. And I think there's this actually beautiful enmeshing. And I think one of the cool things about what's happening in the world is that we as a consciousness are expanding. And so of course, as we're expanding as a world consciousness, then me even speaking about this in a capacity where it's saying, healing in business could be actually one is more mainstream. But I think that that's the power of when we look at authenticity as how am I actually embodying the soul, the the person, the soul that God placed onto this earth at this time to show up and and grow into the highest expression of what we were, meant to do in this lifetime. How am I showing up as that person with that scope? And how do I apply that framework really to my business? I think it allows us to see business differently. It allows us to even look at the way that we show up for people differently. And I think that there is, when you're more aware of those things that also your, just gifts and talents and things that just come naturally to you, structuring your strategy for how you connect and reach with people is more powerful. And one of the things I'm actually working on right now that I'll share with you is actually a course that really is intended to help people create a soul inspiring business. It's going to start out with being targeted more towards real estate agents because that's my world. And I'm going to really be creating something that will kind of merge these two. How do you create a soul inspiring business for real estate agents? But the framework itself, a lot of the meditations, the visualizations that I'm actually going to be recording, I'm going to be creating those, and for people to you know to download, to purchase, and use them how they will. So I'm super excited about that. The other thing that I'm super excited about for anybody local or anybody that's even wants to travel to the Annapolis area, my business coach, Jen Cudmore, who was on the episode, if you missed it, she was on the 100th episode of the podcast. She's actually going to be coming to the Annapolis area, and we're going to be doing a training together. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the 3 truths of creating soul inspiring business, which is from one of our previous episodes, specifically on the topic of authenticity. And then Jen will be there, and she's going to be going through her what she calls the branding archetypes. We've got a show on that from, gosh, it's one of the beginning ones on the archetypes, but it actually sort of gives you can take a test online and it'll give you your brand archetype, which taps into those gifts. So it's a way to basically take the overarching bigger topics that I'm talking about and then sort of break it into, okay, let's take this from an archetypal perspective, and then what does that actually mean in terms of how I'm showing up in my business? So cool things on the horizon. And certainly, as soon as I get closer to dropping some of those um, uh, downloads and visualizations and the course and all of that stuff, I will definitely share it with you. But I think what I'd love for you to take out of this is this simple concept that you are very intentionally created for this time. You are very intentionally given certain gifts to help you grow and expand into this highest version of yourself. And very simply, your job really in this lifetime, your soul assignment, if you will, is to figure out what those gifts are, share them with the world, and make a difference and an impact. Put simply. So I love sharing this with you and being here with you today. If you have any questions, DM me, reach out. One of the easiest ways to get me is through Instagram. I'm probably most active on that social profile, and it's at Kara, Kara Chaffin, Chaffin. Donofrio, Donofrio. I know it's a mouthful, but it's my full name. So that's the profile on Instagram. And then you can also go to, or you can actually just even email me. It's Kara, Kara, at kcdrealestate.com. So either one, you can reach me. And of course, if this was helpful, if you loved it, I'd love it if you could share it with others. And always, if you haven't already reviewed the show, if you wouldn't mind doing so, it certainly helps me. So with that, I wish you a blessed day, week, and until next time. Loved being here with you today and would love to connect with you more over on Instagram. My handle is linked to the show notes, or you can just type in at Kara Chaffin Donofrio. And I have something special for you as a free gift, my Dynamic Life Journal. This special book has the power to really help you live a soul-inspired life. Go to freegiftfromkara.com. Easy to remember, freegiftfromkara.com. Until next time, beautiful people, sending all my love.